I was saying Yasha, but Rico from RicoScores. I know this video's coming out fairly late, like a lot of these videos that have been coming out the last few days, but I've just been very busy in the most random situations possible the last few days. But either way, most importantly, we're here to talk about my boy Mike Sainristil and why the Commanders drafted the Michigan DB 50th overall in the second round. He has the potential to be the best slot corner in the NFL in 2 years, said Chris Sims. We're going to talk about, of course, my breakdown of him, weaknesses, strengths. I'm going to give you his comp early on so you already have in the back of your mind what type of player this is while we're breaking down everything. I'm going to give y'all all of the stats, Pro Football Focus grades. We're also going to do a dive into how the national media felt about us drafting Mike Sainristil, because you may be surprised at how positive the reviews were. I mean, people were absolutely raving about the pick. And so of course we got to dive into who he is, how he fits in within the team, like what position is he exactly going to play, how it affects guys like Quan Martin and things like that. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Now, after Mike Sainristil, we only have Johnny Newton left of this draft class. Then I can go ahead and do my full draft class review and grade. And of course, I take the time to actually watch film on these guys. So now I feel like I can finally do that draft review and grade accurately. Because before the draft, I mean, I had an idea that we may take some of these guys, but now that we officially have them, it just only made sense to like fully dive into these guys. That's why every single one of them got an individual breakdown, and also every single one of them is going to get an individual film session leading up to training camp as well. And now I almost, after I'm done with the Johnny Newton breakdown, I feel like I'm almost prepared enough to just go ahead and do my final draft grade and review and all of that type of stuff. Make sure you stay tuned because I have so much other content on the way. And without further ado, instead of wasting more of y'all time, let's go and get to it, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first of all, let's start with the comps. I've seen some people say like a smaller Brian Branch. So could this be our good karma for not getting him in last year's draft because Ron Rivera and those guys wanted to play games? And I've also seen like a smaller Jalen Petre, maybe. And maybe you could see that. But I feel like, me personally, my own personal comp, I feel like he's a higher ceiling Mike Hilton, who was arguably a top 3 slot corner in NFL last year. Pro Football Focus feels like Mike Hilton is literally the best slot corner in all of football, and he's the 14th best cornerback in all of football, no matter what type of corner we're talking about. And I feel like our boy Mike Sainristil is a higher ceiling version of that. They already have the same first name. All you got to do is change the last name, add a little bit more athleticism, and I feel like they're the same guy. So I feel like we got a steal in the second round, but we're going to get to that. We're definitely going to get to that. Also, what could it ever hurt to take one of the best, if not the best, defensive players from arguably the best defense in all of college football last year? Like, if Michigan's team really carried J.J. McCarthy to the extent that people say, to all the way to a college championship ring and everything like that, in a college climate that right now revolves around elite quarterback play more than any other time and really in history, then why are Michigan players like Mike Sainristil, who we drafted, Junior Colson, who was my linebacker too going into the draft, not getting way more love than what they're receiving, especially among like NFL fans? I feel like draft analysts and experts, football guys, all love him. Everybody on that side loves him. I only see fans not necessarily loving the pick, whether it be some Commanders fans and even fans of other fan bases kind of questioning the pick and things like that, especially with how small he is in size. But we're definitely going to debunk how small he is, how short he is, even matters. Like, we're definitely going to debunk that throughout this video. We'll get there soon. But again, my main point is, if Michigan was that generationally great on defense because they carried a quarterback to a national championship in a quarterback-friendly college football game that it is right now, then why are we not talking about how elite this defense is, and then especially the players that were a part of that defense, the best ones on that defense? And also, don't forget, the Commanders traded back before they took him. Remember, just to give you the details, we gave the Philadelphia Eagles pick 40, 78, and 152 so that we could get 50, 53, and 161 in return. Just to let you know, that's how that whole situation went down. And so let's just start with how everybody felt about that pick right there. Just first of all, like how national analysts speaking on it. What does everybody feel about it? So starting with Pro Football Focus, they didn't even necessarily do grades. They gave like elite, good, below average, above average, things like that, or just straight up average. Mike Sainristil pick grade was elite. They said the Commanders continue to draft good football players. Sainristil brings a fierce mentality to the team and provides positional versatility. He secured a career best 6 interceptions in 2023, second among cornerbacks in the entire draft class, and his 90.3 Pro Football Focus grade since 2022 ranked 4th among Big Ten cornerbacks. And Sainristil has a great reaction speed and is fearless in run defense. Keep it going. They're not the only ones really rocking with him. Then you also have Third Down Thursdays. They absolutely love Mike Sainristil. They have this ridiculously long breakdown on him. And when you we could just go to the player summary, but it's like a whole essay, beautiful breakdown. Make sure you go check that out if you're interested, if you're hype on Mike Sainristil, and especially after the end of this video, if I can convince you to like him even just a little bit more, even if you're already a fan or you're not a fan yet, if I could just convince you to like him at least a little bit more by the end of this video, and you leave this video hyped about the pick, go and make sure you check out this Third Down Thursdays article on them, because they do an excellent breakdown of like literally every trait possible. They grade everything. They said zone coverage 14.5 out of 15, instincts 9.25 out of 10, ball skills 10 out of 10, press and physicality 9.67 out of 10, long speed 8.5 out of 10, tackling, run support 9.75 out of 10, athleticism 9 out of 10, change of direction 5 out of 5, length 3 out of 5. And then they used that to end up coming up with like an overall grade at the end. They gave him a final grade of 86.75 out of 100, which is a late first round talent. Mind you, we got him 50th overall. And then they also said rookie projection, starting slot defender, but they said third year projection, Pro Bowl, all pro caliber slot defender. That's again coming from this excellent, very detailed breakdown from the guys at Third Down Thursdays. And then they said player summary wise, I already had a relatively high opinion on Sainristil, but after watching the film, he's even a little better than advertised. Especially in today's NFL, you can't put a price tag on having a Swiss Army knife out of the slot who is a fearless tackler and has good coverage ability to match up with an ever-growing list of elite pass catchers out of the slot. And in this draft, Sainristil is the perfect guy for that job. He may not go on day one based on positional value, which is fair, but I feel more than comfortable saying that the Michigan product is a first round caliber talent who will be an instant impact guy, much like Brian Branch was for the Lions last year. That's not it. CBS Sports, we got our boy Chris Trapasso over there who absolutely loved our draft just overall. It's not even just a Mike Sainristil pick, but when it came to Mike Sainristil, he gave us a B+, which is fairly low compared to a lot of these guys we're going to talk about in this video before we get to his actual breakdown. When we're just in this part of the video where we're seeing all of the love that the Mike Sainristil pick got from the national media, draft analysts, football guys, all of that type of stuff. Again, B+ grade. He said pesky nickel cornerback with flexibility, instincts, and a high motor. Can beat some blockers en route to the football as well. Reasonable twitch and plus zone awareness. Exactly the type of player the Commanders need. Tackling good, not amazing, maybe a touch early. So that's the lowest review you're going to hear of him out of any of these guys, and he still gave the pick a B+. Then you go to Yahoo Sports. They gave us an A. They said shouts out to the 2024 All Juice team. The Commanders grabbed a stud prospect to play in the slot for the team. Sainristil is a competitive force who's not afraid to come downhill and hit people in the mouth. He's got pretty solid chops in man coverage too. Nice pickup. Then you have sportingnews.com. They gave us an A as well. They said the Commanders needed to replace Kendall Fuller and do so well with an aggressive playmaker who plays bigger than his size. And in an ESPN article where multiple analysts and experts give their opinions on the entire draft as a whole, there was a segment in it, who was your favorite pick of the entire draft? Bowen said cornerback Mike Sainristil to the Washington Commanders at number 50. A nickel corner with the playmaking mentality, Sainristil was one of my favorite defensive backs to study. He led Michigan's defense last season with 6 interceptions and 7 pass breakups as well. Look for him to play a disruptive role as a rookie in Dan Quinn's defensive system. And then I also see Clay say that his favorite pick was Lab McConkey to the Los Angeles Chargers. As a Georgia Bulldog fan, I just couldn't skip right over that. We had to go ahead and acknowledge that. I also see A.D. Mitchell's one of the picks. That's another Georgia Bulldog. Yes, sir, to the Colts. Now moving on back to Sainristil. Eric Edholm on NFL Network gave a breakdown of Sainristil being picked up by the Washington Commanders. He said on NFL Network, one day, Sainristil will be your favorite nickelback's favorite nickelback. Scouts love the guy in spite of his smaller, leaner frame, and despite switching over from receiver only a few years ago. His football instincts are extremely sound, and his intangibles are off the charts. This is a terrific pick for a franchise bent on completely remaking the football culture in Washington. Then Robert Griffin III also loved the pick a lot. He's probably one of the biggest fans of the pick, but he may not even be the biggest fan. We'll get there. He said Mike Sainristil was one of my favorite players to cover and watch on tape. Great young man of character and a multi-dimensional athlete who played wide receiver, DB, and punt returner. Michigan doesn't win a national championship without his ability or leadership. Commanders are building. There was a lot of hype going from Johnny Newton to Mike Sainristil. People were raving about our draft. And then after we took Ben Sinnott to finish out the second round, a lot of people feel like not only did we have the best draft, or at least one of the best overall drafts out of the entire NFL, but a lot of people feel like we literally won the second round. Mike Sainristil is one of the biggest reasons for that. Then, of course, Brian Baldinger, he does his film sessions on Twitter. When we picked him up, he tweeted, Mike Sainristil might be the very best nickelback in this draft, literally built for the position. And you can go check that out on Twitter if you want to see his quick film session on him, like a quick 1 to 2 minutes. Then Ryan Fowler said, Mike Sainristil is pound for pound one of my favorite players in this entire class. An absolute alpha at corner that takes each rep personal. Immediate upgrade to the corner room and a hell of a ball player for Washington. Excellent start for general manager Adam Peters. And Mike Sainristil was Dane Brugler's 43rd overall prospect, and we got him at 50. So Dane Brugler feels like we got a slight steal there, even though he doesn't even necessarily feel like that we got as big of a steal as a lot of other people felt, where they think that Mike Sainristil was a first round type of guy like we've already talked about. And then Dane Brugler also said about Mike, he said Sainristil has obvious size limitations that will remove him from some teams' draft boards, but other teams will be more than happy to bet on his outstanding toughness, instincts, and ball skills. He will compete for immediate starting reps as a rookie nickel. And then Josh Norris said all the way back on April 17th, over like a week before the draft, he felt that Mike Sainristil could make a lot of sense for the Panthers at 33rd overall or 39th overall. So that's another guy that feels like we got to still get him at 50th. And then Mike Renner himself said, leading up to the draft, that my Georgia dog, Kamari Lassiter, and Mike Sainristil are both the two true day one starting slot corners in this draft, and it's really them and then Gap and then everybody else. And then Dane Brugler also said, quote, after we took Mike Sainristil, quote, Mikey Sainristil is one of my favorite players in this whole draft. At the end of the day, give me good football players, and Sainristil is one of the best football players in this entire draft, unquote. Then you have Joe Klatt that said, quote, best defender on the best defense in college football. He's going to turn into one of those players that every quarterback is going to have nightmares about because of his instincts and his ability to make plays on the football, unquote. And I don't know if y'all know, but before the draft even happened, Joe Klatt had like a YouTube video breaking down his guys that like when in doubt, life savings on it. These guys are going to be great players at the NFL level. And out of the like 6 to 8 guys maybe he named out of the entire draft, Mikey Sainristil was one of them, and then that was his analysis after we selected him. And then Ian Cummings said, the Washington Commanders got 2 of my favorite defensive prospects so far on day 2. Johnny Newton goes without saying, but Mike Sainristil is a dude. Day 1 impact starter in the slot, route intelligence, explosiveness, support / blitz utility, playmaking instincts, home run. Then Nick Saban also said, quote, this guy may be pound for pound the best football player in the entire draft, regardless of position. I mean, that's high praise from a guy like Nick Saban that didn't even have him on his Alabama team. That's big respect over there. And I mean, of course, they played against Michigan last year in the college football playoff, so he got to see him live in person. Also, Nick Ackridge, he said notes after watching Mike Sainristil. He said, first of all, dog. Secondly, zone drops with a purpose. Third, acceleration to close on the ball. Fourth, dog. Then he said one negative. Can get a little too aggressive in the run game and off coverage, and I'll take over aggressive than passive any day of the week with any way that you can look at football players. And then also, lastly, dog once again. Said dog 3 out of the 6 traits that he gave. And then you have Football Scout 365 at Draft Day 365. He said the Washington Commanders are getting a high IQ, athletic nickel corner and Mike Sainristil, an absolute steal at pick 50th overall. And then also going on to break down like his traits. I believe, this was February 18th. This is well before the draft when this same account, this same draft analyst talked about Mike Sainristil and broke him down. He said Mike Sainristil, who played wide receiver before transitioning to the defensive side of the ball, is an amazing athlete with excellent ball skills. We currently have him graded as an early day 2 prospect with late day 1 NFL potential, elite ball skills, route recognition, high IQ with the things he emphasized. And then he also has some clips of him. And the first clip is against Maryland, which I thought was pretty funny. And then, last but not least, and arguably most importantly, this is the last national media guy that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to dive into my opinions on Mike Sainristil. Last but not least, but most importantly, after the Commanders drafted Mike Sainristil 50th overall, Skip Bayless went straight to Twitter to rant, and he said, quote, "Now our historical rival Washington took my favorite defensive back in this draft, Mike Sainristil, who was in the middle of play after play after play for champion Michigan. Jerry, the NFC East just keeps getting better while you shrug and wait and reach," unquote. That was Skip Bayless saying himself that basically after the Commanders took Mike Sainristil, he was done. That was it. The Cowboys already had a lackluster free agency, a very boring one where they barely did anything and they lost way more players than they gained. And then Skip Bayless felt like the Commanders drafted Mike Sainristil was the last straw. I'm done with this team type of thing. You gotta love it when the people that dislike you are upset at something that you do. That's when you know you're doing something right. And then now, after hearing all of those experts, well, at least most of them are experts. I don't know what you necessarily consider some of those guys we had in there. But after hearing all of those guys absolutely rave about Mikey going later in the draft compared to where his talent says he should have gone, let's dive into the athletic profile first, and then we'll get to the stats and all of those type of things. But looking at your screen right now, as you can see, he has an 8.51 relative athletic score, speed great, explosion elite. I'll take that any day of the week, man. To have great speed and elite explosion, that sounds like a great corner to me. And his agility, his shuttle was excellent, top tier, one of the best short shuttles out of all of the defensive backs in the entire draft class. But his agility grade is good overall because his 3-cone wasn't that great. But I feel like on tape, that's not something you need to worry about. I feel like he's extremely agile on tape. So I feel like if anything, he didn't test as well as I expected him to. Now, his explosion was a little bit more than I expected. I mean, he tested as like one of the most explosive corners in this entire draft class, and I feel like he's a very explosive athlete, but I feel like he slightly outperformed himself at the combine there, just going based off of what I see on tape. Closing speed, elite. But, I mean, a 40-inch vertical, y'all. Come on, man. A 10-11 broad jump. Come on, man. But the speed makes a lot of sense, even though I feel like he looks faster than that on tape. I feel like he's definitely better than a 4.47. And I also feel like, again, agility drill-wise, he underperformed compared to what I saw on tape. So I feel like he's more athletic than this when I watch him on tape. And then, in our draft class that Math Bomb himself, the creator of the relative athletic score system himself, said that the Washington Commanders had the most athletic 2024 draft class in the entire NFL, and Mike Sainristil was the lowest by a significant amount with that 8.51. So that tells you how athletic this draft class is. Again, the most athletic out of the entire NFL based on average relative athletic score, and Mike Sainristil is the one that's bringing that average down. But I'm personally not worried about his size. And when you look at his relative athletic score, his size is the reason that it's so low. If he were just a little bit taller, I'm telling you right now, it would be somewhere at like a 9 point something. He definitely would have breached above a 9. And we're going to dive into why his size does not matter at all. I'm not worried about it at all real soon. But just for fun, let's put in the relative athletic score calculations as if like he's not short, just to see how much his height, which again, to me will not matter at all at the NFL level, like many people think it will for some reason, lowered his relative athletic score. And I'm not even going to make him crazy tall. How about we just say 6 feet? And also, I'm not even going to touch his weight. I'm not even going to make him heavier. We're only going to increase his size by 3 inches of height. And I'm going to leave him at that same 182 pounds. So now look at your screen now. A 9.32. Now the size went from poor to okay because the weight's still bad, but the height at 6 foot is like, okay, we can work with this. Explosion still elite, speed still great, agility good, and now he's a 9.32. So that proves my point that literally the only reason people don't see him as this elite 9 point something and above athlete is literally just because he's 5'9". It's literally, that's it. And when you watch his tape, him being 5'9" very, very rarely ever shows up on tape, especially when if your main concern is about him being small and how he's gonna hold up against the run. Trust me, we're gonna get there. You do not have to worry about that. You already heard a lot of the experts address that as well in their breakdowns and their admiration of Mike Sainristil's game, but I'm gonna get to it too. I'm gonna give you some examples of like direct examples of when his size, him being small, never mattered. I mean, he just goes out there and plays way bigger than what he actually is. Now let's dive into his game, his traits, and his potential fit on the defense. Now, first of all, I would argue that he's probably the most instinctual and smart corner we've had here in a long time. I'm not gonna lie, like literally up there with Kendall Fuller, but for sure more instinctual than the college version of Kendall Fuller was coming out of the draft. If we're talking about Mike Sainristil coming out of the draft versus Kendall Fuller coming out of the draft, Mike Sainristil is easily more instinctual. So you can easily say, as far as coming out of the draft wise, Mike Sainristil is the most instinctual corner we've had in a really long time. And even now, Kendall Fuller, 30-something-year-old Kendall Fuller, seasoned veteran Kendall Fuller, Mike Sainristil is still almost up there with instincts, which is saying a lot. And Adam Peters said late after the end of the round 3, after we finished up day 2 of the draft, he said Mike Sainristil will play inside at the star position specifically. Emphasize that. So the star nickel role, like I expected, and just to let you know, star, for those of y'all who may not be aware, is the Buffalo nickel that those guys like Ron Rivera and them were calling it, even though I know it more so as a star position more naturally just because my Georgia Bulldogs have been talking about the star position well before Ron Rivera ever brought up the Buffalo nickel. So in my head, it's always been star. You've seen in multiple videos over the past few years, I'll say star, and I'll be like, oh, my fault, I mean Buffalo nickel. So I'm happy now that Adam Peters calls it the star as well. We can get rid of the Buffalo nickel. Joe Witt Jr. mentioned Buffalo nickel, I believe, but Adam Peters called it the star. Hopefully everybody else can get on board with calling it the star, so I could just only worry about having to call it that one name. We could just get rid of the whole Buffalo nickel term, but it's basically the same thing. And Adam Peters also said that he can do it right away. That's the most important part. He can be a star. He can start day 1, week 1. I love the fact that I heard that from Adam Peters himself. He's very high on him. We have a day 1 starter in the second round. That's what I love to hear. Yes, sir. Adam Peters also said in his press conference that one of the things he does really well is take the ball away. And Adam Peters doesn't think that there's anyone else in this entire class, this entire 2024 draft class, that has the same ball skills as Mike Sainristil. And that's very high praise from the draft genius himself. And if taking the ball away and ball skills are the one thing that separates you from the rest of this cornerback class, then you are the perfect fit in the Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. defense that has led the NFL in takeaways over the last 3 years. They are going to love him, and he's going to love playing in their system. Match made in heaven. Mike Sainristil also has a lot of experience playing in a defense that disguises coverages pre-snap and things like that. So that's another way that he can fit right in immediately with what the Commanders want to do defensively, scheme-wise, system-wise, all of that type of stuff that we're going to run here. It's really, again, a match made in heaven. Yeah, tackle was our biggest need when we made this pick, but when you have the chance to take clearly the best player available at that point, a guy that's going to be a great player for you for years, regardless of position, you don't reach on a tackle that isn't worth that pick. I love the fact that Adam Peters passed on reaching for a tackle in order to take Mike Sainristil there. The fit and the potential of this pick is sky high. I mean, he's literally like a dream case scenario player for Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. for what they want to do on defense. And now let's talk about some stats. Well, most importantly, first of all, again, like briefly mentioned earlier, he had 6 interceptions last year, which was second among all corners in 2023. That may not even just necessarily be this draft class. That's all corners in college football in 2023, point blank period, freshman, sophomore, whatever. And with his elite speed, he has the propensity to run these interceptions back for pick sixes as well, pretty often when you look at his highlights. And also he does it in big games, which I feel like is the most important part, like the national championship against Michael Penix and that explosive Washington offense that also included Rome Odunze, who went 9th overall, and Michael Penix, who went 8th overall. When his teams needed him most, that's when he makes the biggest plays, and I love that. That clutch factor is serious, man. And Dan Quinn, but if anybody needs some clutch as much as possible, it is Dan Quinn. With the way that his defenses look like a top 5 unit, top 5-ish unit at the very least during the regular season, and then suddenly become wet toilet paper during the playoffs, you need as many guys like Mike Sainristil as possible. Guys that play better in the playoffs, not worse, like my dog Ant doing over there right now for the Timberwolves, and it lighting up the NBA right now. I love it. But when you really sit back and think about it, so we take the #1 interception getting corner in all of college football in the 2023 draft in Emmanuel Forbes, and then we go get the second best intercepting corner in all of college football in the 2024 draft. Even though Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. didn't draft Forbes, I'm willing to bet my life savings that they're excited to have him. I'm telling you that right now. It was already reported from multiple sources that the Cowboys were actually planning on drafting Forbes, but the Commanders took him before they got the chance because they picked after us. So you can clearly see that Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. are trying to bring the NFL's best takeaway defense over the last 3 years here to Washington with them. They're trying to recreate that here, so I'm really excited about that. We have 2 extreme ball hawks, extreme great ball skill corners. I'm excited, man. If Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. keep up with what they did with the Dallas Cowboys, being really creative defensively as far as generating pressures and disguising coverages and things like that, I think we're going to force a lot of turnovers here as well. We may not have a Micah Parsons, but I feel like overall we have just as good of a defensive unit, especially this front 7 with the linebackers we have now, the safeties, the corners. I'm so excited. But going back to Mike Sainristil's stats, he was 99th percentile in the slot, 95th percentile in single coverage, 96th percentile versus a clean pocket, y'all. Like, quarterback just sitting pretty chilling, and he has to cover for forever. That's the type of guy that you just drafted. And 94th percentile when time to throw was for over 3 seconds. This guy can cover for forever. And that was one of the main problems the Dallas Cowboys had against the Green Bay Packers when they got whipped up on. That boy Jordan Love was out there, you know, being mobile, extending plays, and DBs were forced to have to cover for more than 3 seconds, which is not typical in a regular average NFL play. And Mike Sainristil excels in that. So this is a guy that's going to fix so many weaknesses that Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. already had an elite defense, but they had a couple of Achilles heels. Mike Sainristil literally plugs up those Achilles heels. Now you want as many guys like that it can help towards that effort. I don't feel like Mike Sainristil immediately solves all of the problems that Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. defense struggled with once it came to being clutch in the playoffs and things like that. But he's definitely a very important first step. Again, 99th percentile in the slot is insane. The best slot corner out of the entire college football, regardless of age or freshman, sophomore, whatever. 95th percentile in single coverage out of all corners. Insane. 96th percentile versus a clean pocket is wild. That is exactly what Dan Quinn needs. And again, when it came to time to throw was over 3 seconds for a quarterback, he was 94th percentile. So this guy can cover for forever. I love it. And yeah, now let's talk about it. He may be small in size, but don't forget, Mike hit stick and had a guy way bigger than him falling backwards when the Michigan played Ohio State. Travion Henderson, the Ohio State Buckeyes running back who wears number 32 of all numbers. Big guy. He's like 5'10", weighs 212 pounds or something like that. Mike hit sticked him, and Henderson was sitting there looking like roadkill on his back, and Mikey got up immediately and was celebrating in like complete contrast to Travion, who was sitting down, laying down, taking a second to get up. Like he just ran into a brick wall or something. Mike had that man with the Looney Tunes birds and stars floating around his head for a second, man. I'm not worried about it. And then also, there's multiple times on tape that he does this, but I vividly remember a play in this tape where he plugged in like a run fit, just like a linebacker would. Like met the running back at the line of scrimmage and everything, like in the B gap somewhere or something like that, and made a nice strong tackle, not allowing the running back to move any further. The running back was bigger than him, of course, and he didn't get any yards after contact because of it. There was also like a defensive end kind of grabbing his ankles, but Mikey Sainristil was the reason that guy did not get any yards after contact. He's a very physical player, very physical play, and it also perfectly encompasses what type of play style he has. You do not have to worry about him against the run. I urge you to go find that. I forgot exactly which team it was against. It was not Ohio State, but he literally met the running back at the line of scrimmage, literally plugged in as if he was a linebacker. He's not the type of guy that is only useful in coverage and obvious passing downs. He can make plays against the run, which will first of all help him survive in this league as long as possible, but also it makes it so Joe Witt Jr. can keep him on the field as long as possible, and also as a rookie get him on the field as soon as possible, which is why we feel like he can play day one, because he's not just an elite cover guy. He can also help stop the run as well. He's not a guy you need to take off the field just simply because it's 3rd and 1. If you want to keep him in there in 3rd and 1, you definitely can, even though the only reason I would say maybe you would take him off is because we already have a lot of elite guys that can cover and stop the run, like a Jeremy Chin. You just drafted Jordan McGee. We have guys that are more like safeties and linebackers that are way bigger and more athletic that can do it as well. But Mike Sainristil, hey man, if they catch you off guard on 3rd and 5 and they end up running the ball and we didn't expect it, I'm perfectly fine with Mike Sainristil being back there and having to go out there and make a tackle on that running back before he reaches that first down. Perfectly comfortable with it. And speaking of specific plays, I beg y'all to please go look at the play he had against 6'5" tight end Cade Stover, Ohio State, in the end zone in the clutch. It was beautiful. Please go look at that play. You'll probably never question his size again. Because then on the other side of things, outside of as far as being like tall enough, big enough to stop the run, tackle running backs, deal with all the clutter within that, you know, and the harder the offense, the harder the defense and things like that. Also, you may question, okay, well, with him being 5'9", how does he fare up against a 6'5" tight end like Cade Stover? That man's still in the corner of the end zone. Again, when they needed him most in the clutch, the 4th quarter, sat there. I mean, perfect pass. I think it was CJ Stroud that threw it to him as well. And the ball is up there, and you would think only where the 6'5" tight end can get it. Good throw from what I believe. I'm almost sure it was CJ Stroud. Mike Sainristil still found a way to get his hand up there and knock it down. The ball skills are elite, man. It's something that you think you can teach it. In theory, it seems like it's something you can teach, but a lot of these guys, if they leave college without having it, they usually never get it. Mike Sainristil has it. So you do not have to worry about the height as far as stopping the run, and also dealing with bigger receivers, tight ends, and things like that. Of course, you don't want him to just cover Mike Evans on a consistent basis, but if there's ever a moment where he's matched up against him for some whatever reason, the offense does a great job getting Mike Evans matched up against him on a play, you do not have to just absolutely panic and just assume that Mike Evans is going to win the rep. Mike Sainristil actually has a better chance at stopping him than you normally think. But of course, Mike Evans is a great receiver. He beats even the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So I'm not saying that Mike Sainristil is going to go out there and lock up Mike Evans, but I'm telling you, he gives you a better chance a way better chance than you'd expect of a guy at 5'9". Also, just to let y'all know, I'm assuming team fit wise, Quan Martin will move into like a permanent strong safety role where he'll be like literally a far more athletic version of Cameron Curl in 2023. Remember, Cameron Curl in 2022 was around the box. He was our star Buffalo nickel hybrid linebacker type of guy around the line of scrimmage, usually somewhere with the front seven around the linebackers more often than not. Then in 2023, he moved into more of like a pure safety role, was further back in coverage, way further away from the line of scrimmage. I think Quan Martin's going to be more so that version of Cameron Curl most recently recently that we saw in 2023. But again, faster, quicker, more explosive, more athletic in every way possible. So the ceiling is higher. And then you have Jeremy Chin, who will be like a hybrid linebacker type of guy. And then our boy, Mikey, will be like a pure star position, pure slot corner type of guy. So we have a few guys that are really versatile that can all plug and play, kind of doing like similar things. But I think Quan Martin's going to be more of a strong safety. And then Jeremy Chin's going to be more so brought in as like an extra linebacker with elite coverage skills. And then our boy Mikey will be the pure slot corner, or again, star like Adam Peters said he will be. But with all of these guys being so versatile, and that's just to start it off, we have more versatile guys even outside of that. That's going to help us disguise what we're doing pre-snap to offenses so that they can have absolutely no idea who's in what role, what coverage or whatever, and that will allow our pass rush to have more time to get to the quarterback while he's trying to figure out what's even going on post-snap. Like pre-snap it looked like this, now post-snap it looks like this. Now he hesitates. The defensive line has a better chance and more time to get at him. I feel like they're going to complement each other so well. The front seven and the pass rush is going to help the DBs. The DBs are going to help the pass rush. I can't wait to see it all work out once the chemistry gets settled in. I'm not expecting them to go out there week one and having all of that down pat, but I'm very optimistic about this defense eventually turning into an elite defense by the end of the season. And when you really think about it, you can argue that we got 3 first-round talents in this draft with our first 3 selections, and Jayden Daniels, Johnny Newton, and Mike Sainristil. That's scary business, man. That's really scary business, man. Adam Peters in the cut. That's a scary sight. Oh, and also, just like Luke McCaffrey, this guy, Mike Sainristil, we talked about it briefly, like other draft analysts and experts briefly mentioned it, but I do want to emphasize the fact that he was playing a completely different position at first. He was playing wide receiver for his first 3 years in college and has only been playing cornerback for the last 2 years. So the sky is the limit for him. Him and Luke McCaffrey just moved into the positions that we drafted him to be just 2 years ago. Both of those guys have barely scratched their surfaces. And in Mike Sainristil's case, I mean, with him already having elite instincts, you would think that would be the last thing somebody with only 2 years of experience at corner would have in their game, in their traits as a positive. So I'm telling you, we really got a special guy here. And one last thing about him, if he was just, again, 2 to 3 inches taller, 10 pounds heavier, even outside of how athletic he was, I'm telling you right now, he wouldn't have made it outside of the first 20 picks in the first round. I'm telling you right now, he would have been a top 20 pick lock easily, in my opinion. That's the best way to really think about this kid. We are lucky that he isn't as big is like 6 foot tall, like I showed y'all with the relative athletic score scenario and situation, because we would have had no chance of getting him. Again, it affected his relative athletic score a lot. I also feel like it affected his draft stock quite a bit, because you already heard, I gave you what the experts are saying about saying he's like the best pound for pound player in the entire draft and things like that. Imagine if he was the ideal size that people want with the same traits and athleticism and IQ and instincts that he already has. He would have been a first rounder, no doubt, and we would have never had a chance to get him. So again, I'm mostly telling y'all this. My main point is be happy that he's short. Other teams are overthinking his height, and that's literally the only reason we were able to even get him and Jayden Daniels in the same draft without having 2 first-round picks. Again, we really had 3 first-rounders in this draft. And when you actually really break it down, we traded Montez Sweat basically for Mike Sainristil and Ben Sinnott after we traded back from the original Montez Sweat pick that we got from the Bears. And if we end up finding a way to solve edge rusher, whether through scheme or we end up finding a really elite, at least great, good player somewhere in this roster, this could end up being a home run trade back for us looking back years from now. I can't wait. And I also bet to y'all that y'all will love Mikey, like who he is as a person, like very soon. First of all, he talks big trash, and y'all already know how I feel about that. Y'all already know that's going to make him one of my favorite players on the entire team. But also, I've seen Michigan fans like at Wolverine_Steve say, quote, on Twitter, "I've never respected a Michigan player more than I respect that guy," unquote, talking about Mike Sainristil. He may end up becoming an early fan favorite. I'm telling you now, Just going to go ahead and give you the heads up. The same way he pops on tape when you're watching Michigan games is the same way he's probably going to pop in training camp. Just watch. And again, his personality is going to shine. He talks. I'm telling y'all are going to love him if you don't already. And lastly, before we really get up out of here, one thing for sure, two things for certain, man. Marcus Mariota better come up off that number 0. I originally thought and hoped that number 0 on Marcus Mariota's jersey for the Commanders basically stood for how many throws he would ever throw for the Commanders in a regular season game. But now it better stand for how many training camp practices he makes it to with that number. I hope we go ahead and figure that out very soon. There's no way we let a clearly backup quarterback keep a number away from a future Pro Bowl slot corner. It's just no way. I don't care about positional value or veteran seniority or anything like that at all in this situation. You ain't even did nothing here for the Commanders, first of all. You're a veteran. You're not a veteran for us. So we gonna go ahead and need that number up off you, big dog. I ain't gonna lie, Marcus Mariota. We need that number today. He looks too cold in that 0, and we hope we never see you on the field with the 0. And 0 is too premium of a number to have a guy on the sideline hogging that number, dog. We gonna need that up off you today. I mean, I'm serious. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned because, again, we have Johnny Newton coming up next. But I'm coming out with a really fun Rico report before then, so be on the lookout for that. Then Johnny Newton maybe sometime tomorrow. Now, I'm hoping that I have a little bit more free time now so I can get back to doing 2-3 videos a day for y'all. So just make sure you stay tuned just to let you know what's on the way. Johnny Newton is definitely on the way very soon, within the next 2-3 videos, so we can go ahead and finish up this draft class, and then I can get to my full-blown draft review and grade. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about the Mike Sainristil pick. Do you feel like it was a steal? Do you feel like his height's ever gonna matter at the NFL level? Do you agree with the experts and me where you're very high on him and we got a steal in the second round, somehow getting the first round talent? Or are you lower on him? Of course, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points or any of the expert points. Let me know if you're even higher on him than I am. Let me know what your comps are for him. Again, I feel like he's more of like a higher ceiling, higher potential Mike Hilton, but let me know if you have a different comp. Again, like I said, some people said a smaller Brian Branch. Who knows? Let me know all of that in the comment section. Of course, do not leave this video without leaving a like. Make sure y'all stay tuned. Your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.